guys, it's Amber. Welcome to my channel. I post bookish and home fragrance content. Today I have for you a list of recommendations for fallish vibe type books. Cozy, maybe atmospheric, maybe a little spooky type books that I feel are going to be fun reads for fall that I recommend. So I tried to pick ones that weren't maybe offered a lot of the time. Some may be ones that you've seen recommended before, but I do have some classics. I do have some ones that are a little less known or just aren't in the know as of and talked about right now. So let's jump into it. I think I have 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, I have 12. So the first one I have to talk about, I do not have on me, and I recently read this over the summer. It is Belladonna, and it is by Adalyn Grace. And this is a book that is like a gothic Victorian mystery love story type of book, and it is about a girl named Signa, and she is able to see spirits after the people have died, and she has this connection with death, and death is actually a person. Well, she's an orphan because her parents died, and then multiple relatives end up dying on her throughout the ages, and she ends up going to this next relative's house and finds out that her cousin passed away before she had gotten there. They thought it was like an illness, but come to find out that it's a mystery kind of how she died, and her younger cousin, who is the daughter of the mother that passed away, is now sick with the same illness. And it's up to Signa to solve the mystery and figure out what's going on. And so she ends up having a rocky relationship with death at first, and then they kind of end up teaming up to figure out what's going on. So it's a fun book. I definitely recommend it. I am actually about to read the second book in the series, which is Foxglove. And the third book comes out this month, or it came out at the end of August. It either came out at the end of August, or it's, actually I do think it came out in August. I'm waiting for it from the library, so that's why I want to hurry and read the second book so I can get to the third book when it's available. But highly recommend that series. It is good if you're looking for that spooky like Victorian Gothic mystery type book. Okay, the next one I have is the first book in the Parasol Protectorate series, and it's called Soulless, and it is by Gail Carriger. So the Parasol Protectorate, it's they're like a secret like spy organization. It takes place in, again, Victorian type England. And the main character, Alex, or Alexia is her full name, Alexia Terabody. She is part of this protectorate. She actually doesn't have a soul, and she gets into a bunch of hijinks. There's a mystery. She accidentally kills someone who attacks her. There's vampires. There's werewolves. There's lots of different stuff that happens in this. This is super fun. It has witty banter in it. There's a slight amount of content in it. If you're one that doesn't want any sort of stuff like that, there is a little bit, but it's not like closed door, but it's not like in your face either type of scenes. From what I remember, it has been a minute since I have read this, but I do remember it wasn't like super graphic. So it's not closed door, but it's not like fully wide open door. And I think it's just one scene, if I'm remembering right. But it's the first book in the series. I want to reread it. That's why I did pick it up and then see if I want to continue. But it's a great fall read for sure. Okay, the next one I have for you is a classic, and it is The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle, who is the author of the Sherlock Holmes book. So this is one of his most famous Sherlock Holmes novels, and it is about a mystery involving a family where someone gets murdered, and they think it's this like devil dog, this evil hound is the one that killed the person that was, murdered. Sir Charles Baskerville, that's the name of the man that was murdered. And so the heirs to the estate want Sherlock to solve the mystery before anyone else ends up dead. So it's fun. If you haven't read any Sherlock Holmes, I think this is a great one to go ahead and pick up, because it definitely fits the fall, like spooky vibes. So it's fun. And that is The Hound of the Baskervilles. Okay, next is another classic mystery type novel, and it is Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. This is probably one of her most famous books, and it is a super fun one. I don't think, this is another one, it's been a long time since I've read it, but this one doesn't have any of her famous detectives in it, so it doesn't have Poirot, it doesn't have Miss Marple or anything like that. It's its own type of story, and it's about these guests that come to this big manor or mansion. They were invited to this mansion that's kind of like secluded. I'm pretty sure it's on an island, and they're all invited for, they don't know why necessarily, but they come there, and one by one people start dying. And so it's a mystery thriller, and it will leave you guessing pretty much until the end. It is really good. She is the queen of mysteries for a reason, and this is one that I highly recommend. So that is And Then There Were None. Okay, next up is a recent publication. The second book comes out this month, and I really enjoyed this one. It is The Assistant to the Villain, and this is by Hannah Nicole Mayer. It's hard to say her last name. And this is about a girl named Evie who ends up becoming the assistant to the villain. So the villain, and that's what he's kind of called. He's just called the villain. Later in the book, you kind of learn his real name, but for most of the book, he's just known as the villain. So he kind of has like a company almost of villainy to where he is like the CEO, and he's out there doing villainous things against his nemesis, which is like the king of the land, I guess. And Evie ends up becoming the assistant for him, for his company of villainy. It's super fun, whimsical, tongue-in-cheek. It is a romantic comedy, but there is it's not gory necessarily, but there are kind of like macabre things in it, like when Evie first enters the building where she's going to work as his assistant. There's like heads hanging from the rafters type of thing, that sort of thing. But any sort of like graphic gore, there isn't any of that from what I can remember. I'm pretty sure there isn't, because I'm very sensitive to that stuff. So there isn't really anything like that in there. So this is super cute. This is like if you love that grumpy sunshine type of trope, You definitely get that in this. And the second book, as I said, comes out this month, and that is called Apprentice to the Villain. So I am planning on reading this one again before that one comes to the library for me. So definitely recommend this one to give you those fall, more lighthearted, even though it's about a villain, it's a little more lighthearted type of read compared to like the Agatha Christie book. So Assistant to the Villain, super fun for sure. Okay, moving on, we have a classic. I can't not talk about fall books and not talk about Anne of Green Gables. This is by Ellen Montgomery. I adore Anne of Green Gables. I adore the whole series. I've been reading these books since I was a kid, and this is like super classic paperback. I'm on the hunt for some good hardbacks of this series, but specifically the first book, it takes place all through the year, but it gives me fall cozy vibes just because the story is cozy. It's about Anne Shirley, who is an orphan. She is adopted by a brother and sister that live together. They thought they were adopting a boy to help. Matthew and Marilla are their names, to help on the farm. And they get a surprise when they find out no, they adopted a girl. And so the story starts from there. And this takes place on Prince Edward Island. It started my love for Prince Edward Island when I first read this. And I've always wanted to go there since reading this book. So highly recommend if you've never picked up Anne of Green Gables. It's so cozy and fun, and it's a classic for a reason. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful series. So it gives me the fall vibes, even though it isn't like just taking place in the fall. So Anne of Green Gables. Next one is a contemporary YA romance. This is another one that doesn't necessarily just take place in the fall. That is Anna and the French Kiss. This is by Stephanie Perkins. This is the original cover. I've seen other covers since then that I like better than this one. This cover is slightly cheesy to me, but the book is wonderful. It takes place starting in the fall, and it's about a girl named Anna who ends up going to Paris to finish school. I'm pretty sure it's her senior year. She ends up going to Paris. And it's about her life adjusting to France and the people she meets there. It is a romance, a YA romance. So there is a friendship starting out as friends to lovers type of story. It's so cute. It is an adorable book. This is the first in a trilogy. The second one it's called Lola and the Boy Next Door. And the third is Isla and the Happily Ever After, from what I remember. But this is my favorite. So Anna and the French Kiss, even though it's not just in the fall, it gives me those fall, cozy, sweet, fun, fluffy vibes. Okay, next one is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is part of her Shadowhunter world. This is the beginning of my favorite trilogy out of all of them. It's the only series that I have kept and will forever reread. And so it's the first in the Infernal Devices. Now, you don't have to read her other books to read this trilogy necessarily. Which is why I'm recommending it. So even if you haven't read any of her others, you can read this one and the other two and be perfectly fine. Now, her newest trilogy, I would say you need to read this trilogy first before you read that one. And that was called the Last Hours trilogy. So definitely pick this one up first. Don't spoil yourself. But this is wonderful. It's another one where I'm not sure if it absolutely just takes place in the fall, but it gives me those fall gothic type of vibes. So shadow hunters are a race of humans that have this special like angel blood in them, to where they are able, they're warriors and they fight demons. And they're not normal demons like we think of demons. They're like monsters from other dimensions, which is, they fight, but no one else can really see them. So this takes place in like Victorian England again. I'm like, a lot of them are like Victorian England type of novels. It's just some of my favorite periods to read about. And this is about a girl named Tessa, and she goes from the US to England to find her brother. Once she gets to England, she ends up getting kidnapped by, I think they were warlocks, if I'm remembering right. These two sisters that are, I'm pretty sure they're warlocks, but I could be wrong, who say that she's actually a downworlder, which is someone that has powers, like they could be werewolves or vampires or warlocks or that sort of thing. They say that she is one, even though she's only known herself to be a human, and they kind of torture her until her power comes out. She ends up being rescued by shadow hunters. This is Will Herondale. He is my favorite, one of my book boyfriends. He and some other shadow hunters rescue her, and the story goes on from there. It ends up so it's like a steampunk kind of gothic Victorian type story. It's wonderful. Highly recommended. I'm not normally huge into love triangles, but there is a love triangle in this trilogy, but it is a love triangle done right. It is wonderful. I love every character in these books, so highly recommend this, Clockwork Angel. Okay, classics. Some more classics for you guys. When I think fall, I think The Hobbit. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and Lord of the Rings, specifically the first book, Fellowship of the Rings. These both give me fall vibes. This, you should know what The Hobbit is and The Lord of the Rings, but just in case. So The Hobbit is about a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, and hobbits are these creatures that are smaller and have big feet, and they're all about coziness. They live in hobbit holes in what's called the Shire, and which you can see my little hobbit hole right there, my warmer that I just got. They are all about food and comfort and gardening and all of that, keeping to themselves, being insulated. They're not about adventure at all. One day, Gandalf, who is the wizard and is friends with Bilbo, comes to his house, and these dwarves end up showing up as well. And I can't remember if the dwarfs come first or it's Gandalf that comes first. I think actually it's the dwarfs just show up at his house, at his hobbit hole, and he ends up having to host them, and he wasn't expecting them, and then they ask for him to come on an adventure with them. And then Gandalf shows up and convinces him. At first, Bilbo's not going to go, and then he ends up going. So it is an adventure type of story. It's a quest, and it gives you all those fall, like adventure, cozy type vibes. Then the first book in the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Rings, this is also a quest as well. But this takes place about 110 or, well, maybe not that much, because Bilbo is like 110 in this book. So I'm not sure how much later, but it's years later, a few years later. And his nephew Frodo ends up being the one that's like the ring bearer. They have this ring of power and they need to destroy it. And so it's a quest that involves Frodo, who is Bilbo's nephew, and some other hobbits, his cousins, his one of his best friends, and Gandalf, and elves, and dwarves, and humans. It's wonderful. I don't know why anyone wouldn't know anything about Lord of the Rings, but just in case, highly, highly recommend. But if you are looking for, of the two, something that's an easier read, I would say The Hobbit was geared more towards it. When it came out, when it was published as a children's book. So this one is a little easier to read than the Lord of the Rings. So of the two, if you're like, well, I don't want to, this intimidates me, then read The Hobbit. But I recommend both. They are the GOAT for sure. So, okay. The last two are by the same author, and they are An Enchantment of Ravens and Sorcery of Thorns, and they are by Margaret Rogerson. The Sorcery of Thorns is fall into winter vibes. I feel it's about a girl who ended up being raised in a library, and it is a magical world, and she's in a library that takes care of grimoires, so magical books, and keeps them from getting into the wrong hands. And a grimoire ends up getting stolen, and she has to team up with a guy who is a sorcerer named Nathaniel Thorne, and there are demons that are like servants to sorcerers, but not, again, like you think of normal demons. They're not like that, but they are like the servants / slaves of sorcerers. Each sorcerer kind of has their demon servant. So she ends up having to team up with them to figure out what's going on, to find the grimoire, and to vanquish the evil that's come into play. I loved this book, which is why, if you saw a recent haul I recently hauled this. I think it was my last haul that I showed. I adored this book. This was 5 stars for me. The characters were all wonderful, and the story was exciting, and I'm a sucker for books about books and library. I'm a sucker for that. So highly recommend this for a fall read. And like I said, it was like fall into winter almost. And then this one, The Enchantment of Ravens, I did really enjoy this one as well. I am going to reread this one. This is more like specific to fall. So this is about a girl named Isabel. Right, that was her name? Yeah, Isabel. She is an artist, and she lives in this world where there are fae, and the fae cannot do things like painting or writing or anything artistic. And so they proposition humans to do those things for them. So Isabel ends up being asked by the Fae King of Autumn, his name's Rook, I think it is. Yeah, Rook, to paint a picture of him. To paint a picture of him. Well, things end up happening because the picture was too kind of lifelike, to where it kind of showed human emotions or something, from what I'm remembering in it, to where she ends up getting whisked to his court because he's furious and he wants to punish her or whatever. And then there ends up being like some evil unleashed, and her and Rook need to kind of work together to overcome those things. So this one is super fun too. So if you're looking for a good fae story that takes place in autumn, that has those vibes, this is a good one. I don't see it talked about really in the last couple years. And fae stuff is all the rage right now. So I do recommend this one. It is a standalone. Both of these books are standalone books. Sorcery of Thorns does have a novella, though, that I read a few months ago. That was really cute, too. So that's it, you guys. Those are some recommendations for you in regards to fall books. Hopefully there's something that sounds interesting to you. And yeah, happy fall reading. I'm so happy that it is fall reading time. I'm looking forward to some of these to reread and to pick up some new ones. Tell me down in the comments, are you a seasonal mood reader? And do you have any recommendations for me? Because I'd love to add them to my TBR list because it's not long enough at all. So thank you for spending some time with me. Please like and subscribe. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Until next time, TTFN, ta-ta for now.